we have the wonderful and amazing Shelly Davis with us. Shelly Davis, if you haven't come across her yet, oh my gosh, where have you been? She runs the amazing Piano Parent podcast, and she communicates with teachers like us, but also parents to help them support their child at home, which is so valuable and something we talk about all the time here on the show. And I'm delighted to have her on here again because apparently we haven't talked for almost 4 years. She was just saying that the episode we recorded together was back in December 2017. So it's so great to get a chance to catch up with her. And here comes Miss Shelly Davis. Welcome, Shelly.
Hi, Nicola. I'm so excited. It's so great to see you.
So good to have you here.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I've been a little bit nervous about coming on live, but seeing everybody in the chat, which I had to turn off so that I wouldn't be distracted reading that, but it's exciting to see everyone here. So thank you so much.
Yeah, right. It can be nerve-wracking for sure coming on live. So we appreciate it. We really do. And we've had all the things happen before, so don't worry about it. I make all the mistakes. And you won't be alone if anything goes wrong. We're not a super polished environment. We're all about learning from the whoopsies along the way. But
absolutely.
Yeah, I was asking folks in the chat there before we came on about their favorite episodes of your podcast, and Jana just said their favorite episode of Shelly's offhand, Technique with Benjamin Steinhardt, was her favorite, which is a great one to bring up. So lots of people having their favorite episodes, which is awesome to hear. I know how it is as a podcast producer. You're like behind this mic and it just goes out into the world, and it's like sometimes you never hear back from people, right?
Right. And I'm so grateful to hear from Jana, and that Benjamin was very gracious. Wonderful episode. He hopped on a chat with me, and then that extended into a full featured interview with him. And I'm happy to see Jana, actually. She and I have an appointment later this afternoon. She's coming on a chat, and I'm going to extend the invitation to you, Jana, to see if we can turn that into a longer interview also later. So thanks for the opportunity to gather more guests for my show.
Absolutely. Oh, you'll love having Jana on. She's wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'd love to take it back to the beginning first, Shelly. Why did you decide to start this show? Starting a podcast is not a small undertaking. What made you decide to do this way back at the beginning of the show?
Right. The show started in August of 2016, and I had been a podcast listener for a couple of years before that. I don't know how long podcasts have been around, but I love listening to them. And Tim Topham was maybe one of the few people that had a podcast all those years ago, and I enjoyed listening to him. I felt like he was like a personal mentor, a personal teacher, helping me as I was. I did a project, a bookshelf that's in my room, and my music room, as I was restaining it, I was listening to Tim Topham. So he helped me do that project. But I love learning new things and just trying to see, what's the worst that could happen. And I learned from some other podcasters who talked about getting into podcasting. And I also noticed on some of our social platforms, I love that we have the opportunity to interact as teachers around the world through social media. And I understand that it's a water cooler and people can sort of let off steam and say things in there in a safe environment that they would never say to piano parents. But I noticed that there was a lot of frustration that teachers had toward parents in their studios with different misunderstandings, or they don't understand how the studio works, and they call piano lessons practice, and that's not practice. But I realized there wasn't much to offer parents as far as what they could search on their own for resources. And so there are a lot of resources for piano teachers, and even more since I started back in 2016. But I thought it would be nice to have maybe a third party, someone else, to help parents understand the inner workings of piano lessons. So here we are.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you're so right that, there are gripes, and it's fair enough. People want to vent from time to time. But if nobody is on the other side educating them, how are they supposed to know? So it's wonderful that you
Right.
stepped in.
And I know that the responsibility falls on individual teachers to instruct and teach their families how things operate within their studio. But when I was a younger teacher, I was intimidated by parents in my studio. A lot of them were older than me, and I was still kind of finding my bearings. And so, hopefully, having my podcast is also an encouragement to younger teachers, maybe even experienced teachers with a different point of view, a different way to approach things. So, even though teachers are the first line of defense, I guess, in instructing their parents. Maybe they don't know how to approach a situation or how to talk to parents, and this maybe gives them some support too.
Yeah, and it can be a great way to start the conversation. I mean, it's not a way to defer all the responsibility, obviously, to you, but
Sure.
if they can send you an episode of of your podcast and say, okay, well, this is kind of what we're thinking about this, or this is, and then that starts the conversation with them. So it's not all, as you say, when you're such a young teacher. I mean, I started as a teenager, and it was scary talking to
Yes,
all these grown-ups, and trying to, even if you knew what was the right way, it's hard to approach it. So it's definitely great to have that support too.
absolutely.
So tell me, have you come across any surprises over the last almost 250 episodes? Can you believe it's been that many?
Yes, I
Oh,
recorded 250 just a few days ago, so I'm
oh my
excited about
gosh.
that. But I'm surprised that I still get nervous to press the record button. Sometimes it takes me two or three times of getting, catching my breath and getting started. And even though it is just me and a microphone, I still take it very seriously. And I know that someone will be listening. Hopefully, someone will be listening. So I get nervous and want to make sure that I do a good job. I'm also been surprised with how gracious people have been to come on the show and your extension of this invitation today. It's so wonderful to be able to visit, across the world. And people have been anyone that I have extended an invitation to come on the show and share their story, share their experiences. I The only time I've ever gotten a no is just because we couldn't work out the scheduling. So it was maybe not now rather than a no. And that's wonderful.
Yeah, no, that's lovely to hear. And I think it's one of the great things in working in the industry we do is anytime I talk to any teacher, they're always so lovely and gracious, even when mistakes are made. So I'm not
Yes,
surprised that they've been generous with their time. And I remember you saying right at the beginning, because I came on the show, I think you posted an initial question in a Facebook group or something and said, would anybody
right.
be interested in doing an interview? And I remember you telling me it took you ages to get through all the people who volunteered initially with that one post.
Right. That's right. And yes, I'm sorry, I didn't have a follow up on that, but
Yeah, no, no, no. I just think it's wonderful
everybody
that
was
everyone was so generous.
yes, everybody was eager to help. And even now, I'll interview someone. You might be interested in talking to this person, and
Yeah.
so it's a wonderful rabbit trail.
Absolutely. And have you had any surprises from parents that you've had on the show? Like anything that they brought up that comes to mind that you just were like, oh, I never thought about it that way, or I didn't know that would be the problem or confusion?
Yes, I actually have a good surprise and I can't believe she thought that surprise. One parent that I interviewed years ago, most of the parents that I've interviewed have been within my own studio. I'll be honest with you, it's been quite a while since I have interviewed a parent for the show. So I'll put this out there. If any of you have parents in your studio that are doing things right and you would like to shine a spotlight on how things are going, please send them my way. I would love to have more parents on the show. But this one parent in my studio, in her mind, she thought that it was wrong or bad to allow her daughter to play pieces that she had learned in the past. I don't know if she kept the books from the past, or she just felt like, well, we're supposed to be moving forward. And she heard one of my shows. She was an avid listener of the show. And through listening to that, I mentioned one time about how it's great to go back and review, or maybe add your own personality to a piece that you've already mastered. And that was just a light bulb moment for her to realize that this was a wealth of, she was building a library of pieces, that her daughter was building this library of pieces that she could play, and the mom was limiting that. And so that was it would have never occurred to me that a
Yeah.
parent wouldn't let their child play old pieces. But
Right.
that's
You can see where she's coming from, where she's thinking as if they were chapters in a geography book. Like, it's a progression. We're getting to the next one and the next one, right? Whereas we're
yes,
saying,
yes.
no, play all the music.
All of the music, past, present, future. Absolutely. Yeah. And once I understood that, that was just a communication glitch. And I don't know that the conversation would have ever come up any other way, but I'm
Mm,
glad it came up through our interview. And I'm glad that it did. And it helped her, and it gave me some great insight as well.
yeah. Oh, that's a wonderful, wonderful thing to share. And definitely call out, I'm going to second that. If people have parents that can come on Shelley's show, I think it's great to have them. And I understand that would be harder to get outside your studio. But also, if there are teachers watching, I know there are plenty of teachers who send their own kids to another teacher because that
Yes.
works out. So it would be interesting to hear about that. You may have had some piano teachers already that have also been piano parents. Have you had anyone like that on?
Oh, yes, yes. Probably a majority of the teachers are also parents, so they're very sympathetic. But it's a little different, of course, dealing with parents outside of your home versus how you would raise your own children. So lots of great perspectives. I
Mm,
don't know if you want to hear about the positive spin from that other
absolutely.
parent, or if you want to wait until later in the show, because she's my favorite tip.
No,
So
go
do you
for
want
it.
to?
Let's not tease people.
Okay. Okay. And I'll tell you that I put together a page on my website, and I'll share more about that later. But I have linked up your interview from when you came on the show and this parent's interview. So if after hearing a little bit about it, if you want to hear more, the whole episode will be on this other page that I made for you. But Beth Hughes was another parent in my studio, and she offered a wonderful interview. And I loved hearing her heart about how learning to play the piano helped her children learn perseverance. And that was very important to her, that whenever they faced struggles and obstacles, that learning how to work out a new piece of music gave them the same skills of learning how to deal with challenges in their life, in their school education. And this was before 2020, when we had the ultimate obstacle.
Yeah.
One of the things that she said was that her children performing in a piano recital was such an important event. When we work on school projects that our kids bring home, science projects and all of that, it becomes a family affair, and everybody can help and put it together. And then the child takes it to school and they get the credit, but everybody did the work. But it's not so with the piano recital. I mean, the child has to do the work on their own. A parent can encourage and demand that they practice, but ultimately all of that work comes straight from the child. And the performance, the presentation of that piece is a burden that's on the child's shoulders. And how thrilling it is to watch your child succeed after, a parent can see all of the phases: learning the piece, playing it badly, working through all of the kinks, and then finally the celebration of a successful performance. That really changed the way I viewed recitals after hearing Beth's perspective.
Yeah, that's wonderful to hear. And it's something I try to include in my welcome speech actually. Every recital that I do, I point out how scary it is to get up and how much went into this moment. And I feel like although everyone is kind of aware of that, until they get it pointed out to them, adults can kind of say, oh yeah, the kids are, they just do it. And I have to point out, no, like imagine you were getting up here. It's just as scary for them. This is not suddenly easy just because you're a child. And all of this
Right.
work has gone into it. So, um, yeah, it definitely builds that determination. And I've actually had parents in my studio say that because of recitals, or they put it down to recitals, that all of their kids are perfectly happy to get in front of the class and make speeches and do all those sorts of things. So that's been wonderful.
Yes. Yes. I agree. That's been a big emphasis in my own studio. And even to build up to the recital, we'll have piano parties, is what I call them, but they're performance classes so that the students can get comfortable performing in front of a small group. Everybody's performing, so it's not, one person spotlight thing. And then they gradually get more comfortable to perform at the spring recital. And as you say, that helps them in so many other academic areas where they have to present a speech in front of their college class or give a toast at a wedding. I mean, public speaking is a fear for a lot of people.
Yes, absolutely. I often point that out as well, just to put them in their mentally in their kids' shoes. Like
Yes,
this is not a piece of pie. It takes
you're
effort
right.
to get up here.
Yes.
Um, so if that's been some of your favorite things from parents that you've learned on the show, what do you have a favorite tip or idea that you've gotten from a fellow teacher who's been on?
I think there are a couple of things that I enjoy hearing from teachers that come on my show. I love hearing their origin stories. Some people say they're not interested in those things, and maybe some of my listeners aren't interested, but I love hearing how people got started. Maybe there was already music in the family, and so it was just part of what you did. Maybe it was a short term, let's give this a try and just see how it sticks. And then it blossomed into not only being able to play piano, but now they're teaching other people to play piano. So I really enjoy hearing those origin stories. And then, in addition to that, especially from the perspective of thinking about piano parents, I love hearing from teachers how their parents were so influential in their own studies. Some teachers will tell me that they had a personality conflict with a teacher. Maybe the teacher was much more strict than was their learning style. And so the parent was perceptive and recognized that we need to make a little change. I spoke to Marvin Blickenstaff. I'm
I
sure
heard that
teachers are familiar
episode.
with him. And he talked about how that his one teacher just wasn't really challenging him enough. And so his mother found the best teacher in the state who just happened to live down the street from them, and how much more he was able to excel through her. Teachers have told me about times when they wanted to quit. Maybe they did take a break, and their parents recognized that that was, a safe thing to do. And then after a year or so, then the child came to the realization that, piano really is important to me. It's not something my parents are making me do. And so they came back. That was my story. I thought I had learned everything there was to know about piano when I was in the 10th grade. Wrong.
I'm done.
I'm there, conquered that one. And my parents let me quit. Who knows what kind of conversations they had behind closed doors, but they allowed it to happen. And then one day in the band hall at school, this one girl was playing all kinds of amazing things that I knew I couldn't play. So I asked her, "Who is your piano teacher?" And my parents signed me up with that teacher. And then even to the point of studying music in college and being fearful or wanting to quit or feeling like it's too hard, and hearing stories of how parents encouraged these teachers to keep going and to see it through and to finish. And now the teacher is reaping all of the rewards of the support their parents gave them when they were facing that difficult time.
Oh yeah, that's wonderful to hear, and wonderful to maybe share with our parents as well. If that's part of our background and how we got through it, share with them some of the trials and tribulations that maybe happened at home
Absolutely.
for you. Yeah, as we
I
all go through
agree.
those ups and downs. That's wonderful. So, is there anything you've you've started to realize that piano teachers often misunderstand when it comes to piano parents and their perception of piano, or how they help kids at home, or anything like that.
I think we've kind of already touched on a little bit of the fact that parents do need to be educated. And, excuse me, there may be some things that parents are thinking that we just don't realize they're thinking. And so communication is so vital, whether it's, regular emails or even just a phone call from time to time. I shared on the podcast, I don't remember what episode it was, of where I dropped the ball one time with a family, and they ended up leaving my studio. And as I looked back on our relationship, I realized that there were some places where she was giving me signals, and I just missed them or didn't want to see them, or and a phone call for her and some encouragement for this mom would have gone a long way. Whether or not she stayed in my studio or not, I think it would have been just the mom to mom decent thing to do, to reach out to her. Like we said before, maybe younger teachers feel a little bit intimidated to talk to parents, but recognize you are the authority. I mean, you have a skill that you're sharing with their children, and communication with them about how best to teach their children, and they know their children. They are the specialists as far as their children goes, and they can give you wonderful insight on things that the child is interested in, kind of a way in to build your own relationship with that child. And speaking of parent and child relationships, the parent, especially for younger children, they idolize their parents. They are the most important people
Yeah.
in their world. And I haven't heard of this. I hope it doesn't happen, for teachers to say anything ill to a
Yeah.
child about their parent. For example, like I had this happen in my studio where the father was helping his daughter, he thought, and he wrote in all of the finger numbers, or maybe it was letter names above the notes. And that would have been so easy to say, your father's not your teacher. I'm your teacher. He shouldn't have done that. I did not say any of that. I said, you are so fortunate to have someone in your house that can help you with piano. I'm so glad your dad is helping you. Now, I wonder which one of these notes you don't need anymore?
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
one of these can we erase? So always building up that relationship between the parent and the child, and then seeing how you can fit in with it.
Yes. Yeah, that's so true. And I've had a few times where a student has brought in something like mnemonics that they didn't need. I mean, most of the time I don't use mnemonics in my studio. I never rule anything out, but most of the time we
Sure.
don't use mnemonics and they don't need them. And a child who perfectly fine has their landmarks and is doing fine with their note names comes in and says, my dad taught me this amazing trick. And you're like, no. But you don't say that. You don't let it show. You applaud the fact that he's engaging with the
Yes.
piano at home and that he's helping. And then maybe you talk to him separately and explain
Right.
another way that he could help. But you're absolutely right that talking badly about the parent, even if it's in your area of expertise, is not going to help anyone in any situation.
Not at all. Do you find that teachers can be a little bit territorial sometimes? That they feel infringed upon if a parent tries to show their child a different way? I
Yeah.
find that it seems that sometimes teachers can, kind of feel a little bit put upon, that who is this person? This is the way I teach. But I would caution you to try to let that go and try to view the parental involvement as a positive thing. It may boil down to needing to have a private conversation, a phone call with this parent, not to tell them to stop, but just to maybe be curious about what their approach is, what they're wanting to do, and how we can all work together. Our goal is the child's musical education. And I hope that teachers can not feel too territorial about their instruction.
Yeah, I think teachers can get a bit defensive about it and feel like the parent is meddling or just jump to that because it can feel that way to them. I've had a
Right.
very long standing rule with myself, though, that I give everyone the benefit of the doubt in every situation. So I tried to step back and say, if their intentions were good, what were they? And assume that that's what was happening, right? Let me know what you think of Shelley's thoughts there, because I just think it's really interesting to hear these things from that perspective, about parent education and just seeing it from their point of view and seeing these things from so many different teachers as well, so that we can get a flavor for these things are happening. Yes, they're happening everywhere, but it's usually, I hope, well intentioned. That's been my little rule with myself. I made that dramatic decision, I guess, when I was about 15. I decided, no, I'm not gonna question people's motives. I'm just gonna assume, for the vast majority of the time, I'm just gonna assume people mean well. So even if something might sound like, well, it could be a sarcastic comment or it could not be, I'm gonna assume they mean it as a compliment and just take it from there. Maybe sometimes I will look like a fool, but I don't care. I'd prefer to be nice to people. So that's my default mode. And yeah, when that parent comes in and they have those mnemonics, it is totally understandable if you feel like, no, don't do it. Why did you do this? Why are you meddling? I'm the teacher. But, and feel territorial, as Shelley said. But yeah, it's just about taking it as it comes and taking the best from the situation, which is that they meant well, that they wanted to help.